Well, good morning. This is Barry Odell with the Church of Christ at Mammoth Spring Facebook page. And coming back to you today, it's Thursday, January 21st, 2021. We are working our way through the gospel according to Matthew. Good morning, Lyle. Good morning, Gene. And others who are watching, glad you're here today. Matthew chapter 8 is where we will be studying. Garrett and Gail, good morning. Connie. Glad to see everybody joining in. If you have any questions or comments, as always, hey, Roger and Brian, if you have any questions or comments while I'm going along, please feel free to put them here in the comment section, and I will address them as I see them. I'll go ahead and give you a heads up. I received a question yesterday during the live stream, and I spoke to I messaged back and forth with the person, got a little bit better understanding of what they were asking. And so we're going to talk about that today at 1:30 in the After the Stream group. And it's in particular about worship. So for those of you who are part of that group, we'll be doing that. If you're not part of that group, it's a private group on Facebook. You have to ask to join, and I'll let you in. But it should be an interesting discussion. I shared a little video, I think it was like a 1:32 video, as kind of a preview, I guess, of what we'll be studying. But right now we're in Matthew chapter 8. So we've had chapters 5, 6, and 7, what we call the Sermon on the Mount. And at the conclusion of his sermon, the people were astonished. The Bible tells us they were amazed because he's taught one as having authority. He wasn't speculative. He wasn't just commenting on what the law said. He was establishing his new covenant. He was saying, if you're going to, well, the way he wound it down, if you want to be a wise person, you will hear these sayings of mine and do them. The Pharisees, the scribes, they didn't take that kind of authority. They couldn't take that kind of authority. But as the Son of God, Jesus naturally has that authority within himself. Now, as we start into Matthew chapter 8, that authority, that power that he has becomes visible in Matthew's gospel, because now we have his ministry beginning in earnest in Matthew's record. We have more teachings, but we have a lot more miracles being recorded. When you throw in Mark and Luke and John, we learn that other things preceded the Sermon on the Mount, but Matthew has a different purpose and a different setup. So now we get to see along with his teaching, we get to see the miracles. So the first few verses here, the first 4 verses of Matthew 8, Jesus cleanses a leper. Now again, Jesus was a Jewish man. He lived under the Jewish economy. Galatians chapter 4 and verse 4 tells us that. So if you want to learn about the law of Moses regarding leprosy, you can read Leviticus chapters 13 and 14. Very, very specific about, hey, Anita, and Louise, and Pat, and Marisa, and Danny. All of you guys have joined on since we started. Leviticus 13 and 14 are very specific chapters on how to handle leprosy and what to do with it. So he comes down from the mountain. He comes down from the Sermon on the Mount, and great multitudes followed him. And he remains popular throughout most of his ministry, up until, of course, the end when they want to kill him. But right now, his fame is very high. His popularity is very high. A leper came and worshipped him, saying, Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean. Now again, Leviticus 13 and 14, read those. A leper was basically an outcast from society. They had to stay away from people. When they approached, or when people approached, the leper had to cry out that they were unclean. They had to let people know this is a very infectious disease. And so God had legislated how they were to handle this situation. So verse 3, all right, he breaks all the norms. That's the thing here. Jesus put out his hand and touched him. You don't touch a leper. You just don't do that. You don't touch his clothes. You don't touch his house. You don't touch anything. He's defiled. He's unclean. Well, Jesus is not just another man. I am willing. Be cleansed. Okay, and this is an important word here. Immediately, his leprosy was cleansed. A little acronym, a little letter play, I guess you'd say, that helps us understand true miracles. All right, biblical miracles are the letters IOU. Biblical miracles were immediate, observable, and undeniable. And undeniable to even the enemies of the witnesses, or even the enemies of the ones who performed it. They could not deny what was going on here. We see that in John chapters 11 and 12 when Lazarus was raised from the dead. We see it in Acts chapter 4 as the counselors were discussing what to do with Peter and John. They said, hey, we can't deny what's happened here, so what do we do? Miracles, biblical miracles, are immediate, observable, and undeniable. Immediately his leprosy left him. Jesus tells him, don't tell anybody, go to the priest, and I circled something in my Bible. Offer the gift that Moses commanded as a testimony to them. There, again, Leviticus 13 and 14. I know I've said that a couple times, but the specifics of the law are very clear. Jesus was very particular about doing everything God said to do. Now, Jesus was God in the flesh. He had, according to Mark chapter 2 and verse 10, he had power on earth to forgive sins. He had that extent of power being the Son of God. But he still told people to keep the law. Go do what Moses told you to do. Jesus never shies away from doing exactly what God would have us to do. I think that's not insignificant, how particular he was in obedience to God. He cleanses a leper. Now we have another miracle, and it's of a different sort. Okay, so the leper approached him, he touched him, spoke the word, and he healed him. But now we have an account here of Jesus cleansing not the person who comes to him, or a person that he touches, but a person who requests that another person be healed. This is a Roman centurion, so this is a Gentile. He's a soldier, and he is, as a centurion, he would be a leader of 100 other soldiers. It's interesting because when you include Luke's account here, in Luke chapter 7, Luke's record tells us that this man was loved by the Jews. It says that he loves the Jewish nation and even built a synagogue for the Jews. When I consider that and think about Jesus' popularity, I can't help but know that this centurion knew who Jesus was. Let me see here, Luke chapter 7, and it's verse 5. He loves our nation and has built us a synagogue. So he comes to Jesus, not for himself, pleading with him, saying, Lord, my servant is lying at home paralyzed, dreadfully tormented. Jesus says, I will come and heal him. Now again, Luke records some details here that Matthew doesn't. They traveled together. Jesus started heading to his house. Matthew just says, the centurion answered, listen, I'm not worthy that you should come under my roof. Luke tells us they traveled and almost got to the centurion's house, and when they almost got there, we have this discussion ensuing. Just speak the word, and my servant will be healed. And it's interesting why he said that. Again, the fact that he loved the Jewish nation, that he built them a synagogue, I can imply, or I can infer from those implications that he knew Jesus. He was familiar with Jewish custom. He would have been familiar with the concept of the Messiah, even though he was a Gentile. But the reason he came to this conclusion, number one, I'm not worthy that you should come under my roof. Number two, you just speak the word, is based on authority. Look at verse 9. For I also am a man under authority. Notice the wording there. I also am a man under authority. He's talking to Jesus, and again, there's an implication here. I understand that you are under authority. Well, under authority from God. And so his wish is, or his desire here is, just speak the word, and my servant will be healed. When Jesus heard this, he marveled. Imagine having the type of faith that when Jesus saw that faith, he's amazed by it. You've got different degrees of faith in Scripture. I think I mentioned this yesterday. You've got great faith, we're going to read about here. We've got little faith, and you've got no faith. You've got dead faith. This guy has great faith. He says, in fact, Jesus does, I have not found such great faith, not even in Israel. Again, this is said of a Gentile, and it's in contrast with with Jesus' own people. He says, and I say to you that many will come from east and west and sit down with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven, but the sons of the kingdom will be cast out into outer darkness. He's amazed by the faith of this Gentile, and in contrast to his own people, he says they're going to be cast out. They're rejecting Jesus. This man understood who Jesus was and that Jesus was under authority from God, and he had the power to just speak the word, and the paralyzed servant would be healed. Verse 13, go your way And as you have believed, so let it be done for you. And his servant was healed that same hour. Again, immediate, observable, undeniable. Jesus then heals Peter's mother-in-law. Matthew 8:14 and 15, he touched her hand and the fever left and she arose and served him. It's interesting because all these miracles that we're reading about here, the leper is recorded also by Mark and Luke. The centurion's recorded by Luke in Luke chapter 7. This here with Peter's mother-in-law is recorded in Mark 1 and in Luke chapter 5. And then you have here in Matthew 8:16, many. When evening had come, they brought to him many who were demon-possessed, and he cast out the spirits with a word. Notice that, with a word. He said it and they left. There was no process. There was no approval process through a board or anything like that. He just said it and it happened. He healed all who were sick, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by Isaiah the prophet, saying, he himself took our infirmities and bore our sicknesses. That's prophecy number 8 that Matthew mentions of Jesus fulfilling. We've noted those as we've gone along. There weren't any in Matthew chapters 5 through 7. It was just his teaching. But this is prophecy number 8 fulfilled. One thing that I've got written out in the margin of my Bible is at the end of verse 16, he healed all. It wasn't just a few. It wasn't folks who bought tickets. It wasn't the front row. He healed all people, demon-possessed, all who were sick, a variety of issues, and he healed every one of them. Now, based on what's going on here, his popularity, the witness of everything that he's doing, great multitudes are still around him, verse 18, and he gives a command to depart to the other side. He's up north in Palestine, up around the Sea of Galilee. He's saying, let's go to the other side. So they're, at the moment, as we're reading, they're on the western side. They're between the Sea of Galilee and the Mediterranean Sea. He's wanting to go to the east. Well, before that happens, somebody says, "Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go." And you have a word of warning here from Jesus. Foxes have holes and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. I don't know if we've ever thought about that. We see Jesus repeatedly in the gospel accounts going to someone else's house. He went to Matthew's house, Peter's house, Mary and Martha's house, Pharisees' houses, Zacchaeus' house. We never see him going to his own place like that. That's not why he was here. It's just a word of warning. You think you want to go with me? I don't even have a pillow. Perhaps people were caught up in the fame. Perhaps people were caught up in the signs, the miracles that were being performed without thinking through, and that's the key, without thinking through what it truly meant to follow Jesus. Another said, "Well, let me first go and bury my father. Follow me and let the dead bury their dead." This is a matter of priority. Most people believe here that the father was about to die. He wasn't dead yet. He was about to die and be buried. Well, if you're going to follow Jesus, your family cannot come before that. It's a matter of priority. It's about first. So he said, let's go to the other side. Now we see what happens. They get into a boat, verse 23. Mark, interestingly enough, Mark chapter 4 and verse 35 tells us that this happens at night. Now when you go back up to verse 16, evening had come. So Matthew, in a sense, does tell us that it's getting late, it's getting dark, but Mark tells us they get in the boat to cross the Sea of Galilee at night. So they do that, and suddenly a great tempest arose on the sea, so that the boat was covered with the waves. The waves are coming in. The boat is becoming filled with water. But he was asleep. Then the disciples came to him and awoke him, saying, "Lord, save us, we are perishing." It's interesting because when you go back to, let me turn here, you go back to Matthew 4 and you read verses 18 through 22, 4 of his disciples that he called, Peter, Andrew, James, and John, were men who lived on the water. This is what they did. I can only assume that they are among those who went down to him and said, "We're going to die here. We are drowning." This must have been some kind of storm, and not only is it just a storm, but it's at night that the boat is being covered up by waves. "Why are you fearful, O you of little faith?" So look back up in verse 10, I have not found such great faith, not even in Israel. Now we have this rebuke to his disciples, O ye of little faith. They've just witnessed the miracles that he's been performing. He's with them in the boat, and they're afraid they're going to die. He gets up, he rebukes the wind and the sea, and there was a great calm. Jesus not only had the ability to cure diseases, cast out demons, but when you look at this miracle, it's just really astounding to think about the fact that he had control over nature while he was here on earth. He spoke to the winds, and there was a great calm. And their response is, who can this be, that even the winds and the sea obey him? It's not, well, who is Jesus? They're trying to grasp the concept that they're in a boat at night, and it's filling up with water, and he gets up and says, enough, and it stops immediately. What kind of a being are we dealing with here? And we know throughout the Gospels that the disciples, even his own family, didn't believe in him. Read John chapter 7, verses 1 through 5, where his own brothers didn't even believe in him. People struggle with this throughout the Gospel accounts. Now we have two demon-possessed men healed. This is also recorded in Mark 5 and in Luke chapter 8. So they cross over the sea. He performs that miracle of calming the Sea of Galilee with a word. Now they're on the eastern shore of the Sea of Galilee. Two demon-possessed men met him coming out of the tombs, exceedingly fierce, so that no one could pass that way. If you got my PDF on demons in the After the Stream group, I talk about this, the characteristics of those who are demon-possessed and things like that, so that might help you out a little bit. But notice the demons' response. Suddenly they cried out, saying, "What have we to do with you, Jesus, you Son of God? Have you come here to torment us before the time?" Well, before the time of what? I think that's what that's talking about is judgment, final judgment. We know from Matthew chapter 25 and verse 41 that hell is a place prepared for the devil and his angels. The implication being that demons were in some form messengers or servants of Satan. And they knew that their time was limited, and they knew who the Son of God was. Their request is, hey, let us go into this herd of swine. Don't destroy us. Don't send us to hell, Gehenna, if you will. Let us go into that herd of swine. Why? I don't know. We're not given all the details here. We're not told specifically why the demons wanted to go into a herd of swine, but that was their request. And he says one word, go. Just like him rebuking the sea, peace be still. 3 words, and it happened immediately. Now you have this. When they come out, they went into the herd of swine, and suddenly the whole herd of swine ran violently down the steep place into the sea and perished in the water. Why? I don't know. You know, there are events that occur in Scripture that we're not given every detail. We're not given the reasons. We're just told this was said, this was done, and here's what happened. Don't know all the specifics. Then those who kept them, all right, the shepherds, you might say, fled. And they went away into the city and told everything, including what had happened to the demon-possessed men. And behold, the whole city came out to meet Jesus. Well, naturally, you'd want to see the guy who did this, but notice their response. When they saw him, they begged him to depart from their region. The disciples marveled when he calmed the sea and said, man, what are we dealing with here, basically? Now you've got people who, in response to what he has done, let me turn over here to Luke chapter 8 real quick, who in response to what he has done respond out of fear, and they want him to get out of town. They've never seen anything like this. Okay, so yeah, this is recorded in Luke chapter 8 and verses 26 through 39. And I'm just looking here real quick. Okay, these are the demons, as Luke gives us more details. These are the demons called Legion, for we are many, it says. Luke chapter 8 and verse 30. And then it says in verse 31, they begged him that he would not command them to go into the abyss. The abusos is the Greek word here. This is what I was referring to in Matthew 25 and verse 41, the place prepared for the devil and his angels. They understood the authority that Jesus had. They understood who he was. And so Luke gives us a little bit more detail. Then you get down to verse 37 in Luke chapter 8. It says, "Then the whole multitude of the surrounding region of the Gadarenes asked him to depart for them, for they were seized with great fear." And so he got into the boat and returned, seized with great fear. That's why it's good to have 3 and 4 gospel accounts, because one will pick up on something that the others did not record. That's why we have these 4 accounts. All right, so that's Matthew chapter 8. And again, we still do have his teaching to some extent, but now Matthew's honing in on the actions of Jesus, the miracles that he's performing, the fulfillment of the prophecies from the Old Testament. Like I said in Matthew 8 and verse 17, this is the 8th Old Testament prophecy that Matthew records Jesus fulfilling, and it's from Isaiah 53 and verse 4. All right, guys, that's what I've got for today. I don't see any questions or comments. I see a lot of greetings. Glad to see everybody on here today. Hey, Mom. Several came on afterwards. Linda, David, Jerry, and Anita. Glad to have you guys on here today. Well, like I said, don't see any questions or comments. If you got some time at 1:30, I'm going to go live in our After the Stream group to address a question that I was sent. That's not an everyday thing. I didn't do it yesterday. But when I receive good questions, I want to address them. Connie says, healing Peter's mother-in-law. I'm trying to figure out what that word would be. Healing Peter's mother-in-law, I'll just say that's proved. I think there's a typo there. Well, if Peter has a mother-in-law, he was married, wasn't he? You can't have a mother-in-law if you're not married. Yeah, so Peter was married. Might be on the cuff there of talking about some Catholicism issues with Peter being the first pope, etc. Okay, guys, I'm going to wrap it up. Thanks for being here today. Send link to... Okay, I'll do that, Miss Jean. I'll be happy to do that as soon as I'm finished here. I want you all to have a good day. I will... we here at Mammoth, we will go live Sunday at 10 o'clock, of course, with our services. And then we'll be back here Monday at 11 o'clock, and we will hit Matthew chapter 9. Appreciate you being on here. Have a good day and a good weekend.